live. You are now live. Welcome back to the Dad University live show. I'm getting myself oriented with all the cameras. Hello, Instagram. Hello, YouTube, Twitter, Periscope, Facebook. What is it? It's Periscope, but it's on Twitter. I'm just learning what the kids are doing these days. So, how are we on sound? Could probably bring that a little bit more forward. I got microphones and lights and stuff. It's pretty cool if you'd see the outside. So, we're going to take some phone calls. Just kidding. We're not taking phone calls. We are taking chats. If you have got something to say, put your question into the chat area. Last Tuesday we had some great questions. Some people came by and were hanging out, and it was really cool. So hopefully we get some people visiting. We'll give some people a couple minutes and get some questions going. So I hope everyone's doing well out there, and we'll see what happens as people start arriving. That's always the weird part in the beginning, you know. It's like we're starting a live show, and so obviously the reality is that, you know, we're building our following as we go. And so when you say, okay, I'm going live, and, you know, it's not that millions of people are waiting and knocking and sitting there on their devices and waiting until we can go live. Now, that will happen. That's going to happen, and there's going to be tons of people that are going to be doing that. But it is always a little awkward when you're sitting here, and I'm okay to admit that. You know, this is all new for us. We've been doing. I've been doing the videos for, wow, what is it, 85 weeks or so? I mean, we have that many videos. And then the podcast has been going for 4 years or so. So it's been a long time. So, what's that? Oh, sure. Yeah. Just talking to my assistant Wes in the background. So yeah, if you guys got some questions, feel free to type them in, and we will be sure to answer them. You know what? I don't get to see who is on unless they're typing a question. So if there's somebody just visiting, I guess I can kind of see. Oh, there it is. Okay. Got it. Okay. So I can't stay.
You just went offline.
Oh, seriously?
Yeah, when I moved that computer, that's Wi-Fi. Now you're
All right.
Sorry.
So it's back on.
Yeah.
Did it actually start a new stream, or is
I
it?
don't think so.
All right, you want to check? Hey, we're just getting used to this. Well, which is perfectly. It perfectly makes sense for, you know, when you are trying something new and it fails, it's totally okay. And so this week's video, my video that'll come out on Thursday, is about parenting fails. And I put together a couple of different concepts that I think parents are not doing or doing, and what they should be doing or should not be doing, and how those are fails. And so I'm going to talk about those. And one of them, as an example, is apologizing to your child. So it's an interesting thing that happens. You know, you get in an argument with your child, and maybe you yell at the child. The child gets, you know, as they get a little bit older, they start yelling back at you. I'm not sure where they learn that as you are yelling at them. And then you know, they go to their room, or you say, you know, hey, go do something, or you know, get away. And then there's a cooling off period. Hey, daddy time, how are you? There's sort of a cooling off period. And then, you know, they may come down, if you're, you know, in our house it's stairs, so they come down the stairs and then they apologize. How many times have you apologized to them? That's what's interesting, is that as parents, we somehow think that we have a pass or a ticket that allows us to, you know, simply get mad at our children, yell at them, and our behavior is okay because we're the parent. And so that's where I said is a big fail. I have noticed that when I do something like that, where I raise my voice or I handle something not very well, that's a problem. So, what's going on? What is this?
There's chat.
Is it not going on?
Not yet, but.
Oh, okay.
Go ahead.
So we got it. Okay. I'll get to it. So it's just something I think as parents that we need to do is we need to apologize for our behavior and say, you know what, I could have handled that a lot better, and I'm really sorry for the way that I yelled at you. Your children deserve that too. And what happens is then the child sees that and hears that, and then the next time they'll do that same behavior. So we do have a question. It was just more of a compliment. Hey, Blanchett. Gonna be a first-time dad. Congratulations. Glad the videos have helped. That's awesome. And glad you're on the chat with us. So, yeah, there actually wasn't a question on this one. It was just a compliment, which I'll take that anytime. I mean, I certainly don't mind. Hey, what's up, Pablo? So one of the things that I'm talking about on Thursday, and the video is going to be released, is I was talking about these fails, these parenting fails. And so, one of apologizing is a big one. And the other is, taking care of yourself. So that's about eating healthy and exercising. And, the idea that we want to, we want to set the example for our children. And so if you're going to do that, you need to eat healthy, and you need to, and your kids need to see that. And then the other is, if you're going to exercise, and what I say in the video is that, you don't have to be an amazing athlete and be someone who works out every single day and such. But I mean, those are great things, but it's really just about being active. Are you getting outside? Maybe you can go with your family for a walk in the evenings, or, and if you've got a little baby, and put them in the stroller and just go for a walk. Get outside and start being active. Having your body in movement is very, very important. So those are some things that people, I think, fail with. And another one that was interesting, and I actually tell a story about it in the video, is parents not making up in front of their children. So we often will argue in front of our children, but it's kind of equally important to make up in front of the children. And so we don't often do that, and that's a problem. And so, of course, there's parents that will not argue in front of the kids, which, there's debate. I think that if you are somebody who argues fairly, in other words, you're not a crazy arguer, and you're not violent, and you're not such, but, you argue reasonably, that your kids seeing that isn't a problem as long as they see the resolution. And that's where I think that there's a fail. That parents don't make up in front of the children, especially if they are arguing in front of the children. And so one of the things I've done is staged a makeup. We actually made up prior to that, but realized that our kids had watched us argue, and so we made up in front of the kids. So we kind of planned it and did it. And we're not great actors, but I'm pretty sure they bought it. Don't tell them though. So. Anyways, let me see here. Oh, we've got one from Jared. What do you think about getting a pet to teach kids responsibility? As if maybe they're looking at my feed, my text to my wife. That came up recently in my house. I think pets are great. But you have to want that. I remember as a kid always wanting a dog, and then when we got the dog, it was ultimately my dad's responsibility to ended up taking care of it. We were supposed to, pick up after it and clean it and do everything, and we were small kids and we didn't. And so of course my dad fell in love with the dog and was the one who really ended up taking care of it. As far as them teaching responsibility, I think it can. I think there's a lot of different ways to teach responsibility. If you're a pet owner and a pet lover, then great. If you are not, then you may not want the pet in the house. I personally, I do like animals. I do like pets, but I'm not quite ready for one in my house. And that's kind of where I said. So my kids, of course, have gone from a really large animal and desiring that to now wanting something smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. So to the point where, it's now down to a very small hamster is the request. So we're in discussions. It's an ongoing negotiation that we are in. So yes, I do think pets can teach responsibility. I think that's a decent thing. Hey Bobby, how are you? So great question, Bobby. So teenage years, how do you suggest handling a 13-year-old that is consistently challenging authority? So it is also perception. We look at that as a really negative thing. And the reality is that teens, that's what they do, is that they are finding themselves. They are, and in the state, a similar stage happens when the kids are like 5, 6, and 7, is that they start to push their boundaries and they say no to everything. And teenagers have a tendency to do the same thing, just at a bigger level. They're bigger, they're stronger, they're more vocal, they're more dramatic. And so there's certain ways to deal with teens, and I think that that's it's not a one-line answer, but basically it's to give them some space. That's part of it too, is that they do need that space. They enjoy hanging out with their friends more. I mean, I'm noticing that. I have a 10-year-old, and I'm not the biggest priority anymore. It's hanging out with dad is not the number one thing, and hanging out with friends is. So handling a child at about 13 that is really pushing authority, I think it's consistently having those conversations about the boundaries. I think it is giving them a little bit longer of a rope and understanding that that's up to them to, like, you want to see how they're handling it. And I tell my kids, and I have from an early age, is, the more responsible that they are, and the, I don't want to say the better they handle themselves, but how they conduct themselves and how they interact with us allows them to have more freedom. And so when they start realizing that, it's not that they do it in a fake way, but they start to realize that, like, wow, this is not working for me. If I'm going to be mean and I'm going to push my parents, like, that's not really working. And so that's having that conversation. There's a really good course that I plan on taking soon for teens. There's one here in San Diego. Bobby, I'm not sure, you might be up in Northern California or so. Taking a course on teenagers and understanding teens. I myself don't have a teen yet, so my knowledge has been through sort of studying and doing that. So I'm definitely going to have some more teen resources up within the next few years as I go through it, as I study it and try to become more knowledgeable about it. Oh, Bobby, you're in San Fran. So yeah, I would. There's a course that I took for younger kids called Redirecting Children's Behavior. It was really great. But I know with teens, and as much as they push back and as much as they'll consistently push and push, it is important to also consistently still be there. I recall my mother, and this was with my sisters, is my sisters would yell and scream at my mother, leave me alone, get away, I don't want to talk to you. And my mom would sit at the end of the bed and just say, I'm your mother, I care about you, I'm not going away. So you can choose to sit here and talk now, or I can wait. And that could have been a little forceful. But I think what ended up happening is, the child or my sisters, they wanted that freedom, but you also, when you're a teenager, you also still want your parents to be there. As much as a child will say, they want their independence and they want to be free, there's still something to be said about knowing and that your parents are there for you, they're supportive, and they're going to they're going to be there for you no matter what. And as a teen, a lot of hormones, a lot of changes. I think we have to be sensitive to that and understand that they're changing, their bodies are changing, their emotions are changing. So yeah, I look forward to learning more about that. It's been interesting with some of the people that I know that have teens, and they say, "Oh, you just wait." They're giving me the heads up, and so I'm ready. I'm ready to learn, do another chapter of learning about teens. So I appreciate that. Good questions though. I'm not sure if I answered it in too much, but part of that is a lot of the information that I've put out is dealing with new dads and with younger children. So as I grow too, I'm definitely going to be experiencing more of that, and definitely can have some feedback. So hopefully I can help more in that area. Good question though. Here's another one. Dollar Bill. Okay, Bill. Good. Is it normal for a child to have to be told numerous times before they do it? I'm not sure how old your child is, Bill, but yes, and yes. They have said that it can take between 40 and 1,000 times to say something or show them something or do something before a child gets it. I would say sometimes it feels like way more than 1,000. I was thinking of writing a book called 1,000 Times, and it was basically, that you have to tell your children 1,000 times for them to get it and for them to finally do something. So, yeah, even as a small child, you're going to obviously have to tell them multiple times because they're just brand new into this world. Like they don't really know what's going on. They're, you're showing a kid how to tie their shoes. It's like they're just now learning how to tie their shoes. Everything is brand new. So that in itself is going to take a while. And then they, then just repeating things over and over for them to get it. I did a video recently where I was talking about a child needs to be told 1,000 times to be able to do something, and then just when you think that they've got it, and you're like, wow, they got it, like they've been doing it. Like we're doing a nighttime routine, and we've done it for 3 years, and every night, and we take a bath, and we get our pajamas on, and then we brush our teeth, and then we do this, and then all of a sudden they're sitting in the bath, and they're like, looking around, and they don't know what to do, as if they have dementia at age 5, and so. It's a task, and it is very normal for you to have to tell them multiple times, and you have to have patience, and you have to continue on to do that, and that will do it. Hey Sierra, how are you? So you're going to want to tell them anytime. The other thing along with this is, and this is something that really helped me, was it takes children much longer to take in the command and then actually take action. So I'll give you an example. Child is in the bath and you say, okay, it's time to get out, turn off the water. And then you wait. And then you wait again. And you're still waiting. And it's about 10 seconds, maybe 7 to 10 seconds, and you get really frustrated. You're like, I just said turn off the water. And then they still are kind of looking around and not getting it. And what happens is that children, it's somewhere between like 15 and 25 seconds for a child to actually process that command or that information and to then take action on it. So our patience, especially myself, I have much shorter attention span. And so my tolerance level for that is very, very low. And so when you ask the child to do something and they don't do it immediately, you think that they're not listening, or you think that they're going against what you're saying. And the truth is that they just haven't processed it. They just haven't processed the information quick enough. I was just reading Sierra's page. Do the kids ever hang on to the dad's leg as he walks? Absolutely. That was something I did with my dad, I remember, and then of course my kids have done that. That is pretty fun. It is a good workout. You just got to be really careful that you don't step on the kids. But I appreciate that feedback. If you guys have any questions, feel free. We've got YouTube going, Facebook, Periscope, and Instagram. So feel free to ask any of those questions. Yes, Sierra. I'm up for the idea. I don't know if I don't have any children around to make the video. My children are usually asleep when I make a video. I record a lot of the videos, except for this one. The lives are in the afternoons, and I'm at a separate office. But and actually, my kids are too heavy to do that now. You need to do that with a really small child. But yes, that was good times of grabbing your father's leg or even mom's leg and walking. It's funny. Killright has a question. Killright, how can I get my baby to sleep during the night? Wow, that is a big one. So a couple things I'll add to this, and there are some definite sleep experts on this. I actually was working with a woman who had a 12-hour sleep program right when we had our child, and so it worked out really, really well. And so I remember, and this were some of the tips that she had said, was, and granted, there are all different kinds of philosophies for this, because our children cried it out. We tried the cry out method. I mean, my son would cry for over an hour, and it was very, very painful to listen to that. And you say cry it out. That was one thing. The other was we always were making sure that they were full, so they had a bottle before they went to sleep. And the other thing too is just there was some arguments about pacifier and not have a pacifier. I'm not an expert on baby sleeping, but what I will say is the things that we did is we removed distractions from the crib. That was one. We also, what I did notice that we did is that we made the environment so perfect that it ended up being difficult for the child to sleep when it wasn't perfect. In other words, yes, we would remove things, but all the lights off, sound machine, temperature exactly, whatever it was. And what happens is then you go to some place on vacation and the baby can't sleep. So we had a nurse one time. We were vacationing, and the nurse took our child, which had never really slept more than a couple hours. And I'm not sure what the magic dust she put on the child, but she basically said, yeah, the child cried, and I just let him go. And so maybe it was easier for somebody who wasn't personal, but letting them cry. I mean, the reason they cry is because it works. They cry, you go and get them, they get the attention. So if they're realizing that they're crying and it's not really working, they will be less inclined to cry. So it is hard, though. I will tell you that for me and my wife, listening to our son, it was a little bit easier. With our second child, it was a little different because we weren't as strict about trying to get the child to sleep through the night. My daughter, she was our second child, my wife we'd have her next to the bed, versus our son, our first child, he was in the other room, and we were so determined to make him independent, versus the second time around kind of maybe enjoying the process a little more. And so when baby would wake up, my wife would take him, breastfeed, do whatever, and sort of hold him and maybe fall asleep. You just got to be really careful with that. So there's some things to do with that. So I think I'm going to do a video on that because I need to do a little bit more research as well. And so I think I'm going to get get some more information on that, because I mean there are definitely techniques that we used, and I just got to refresh my memory. It's been 9 years, so it's been a while. John asked, what's the number one thing you wish you had before your first child was born? This might seem like an interesting answer. I'm going to say patience. You might be, John, I'm not sure if you're still there. You might be thinking like a product of some kind, like some sort of crib or a machine or something. I wish I had more patience. When my child was born, and even still to this day, I wish that I have more patience. And that would have helped me a lot. I think that enjoying the present moment was kind of along those lines where, I was so concerned about everything being right and everything being okay. I think I missed out on a little bit of the enjoyment of that process, and here's, let's talk reality. And the reason that I do these videos is because being a father was not an easy thing for me. It did not come naturally. I wasn't, I had not held a lot of babies. I did not, I didn't take care of babies when I was younger. I didn't babysit. So for me, being a father was brand new. It was something totally different. I was a entrepreneur and hustler in business, and it totally turned me upside down, where I didn't know exactly what to do, which turns out that's fine. And I just didn't know how to handle a lot of things in a lot of situations. And so that's where I started doing this. I started seeking out answers. I started going to classes. I started reading books. I started talking to other people. I created this meetup group so that a bunch of guys could get together and we could talk about stuff. And hey, you're going through that too. That's the same thing I'm going through. So that was something I think that for me, if the number one thing I wished for with my child was probably patience, my heart rate would be a little bit, or my blood pressure would be a little bit healthier, and I probably would have had a little bit of less gray hair. That's the other part. So I saw some pictures the other day of our engagement, my wife and I's engagement, and I didn't have any gray hair, and it's amazing what 10 years, 12 years, can do. All right, Pablo's got a question. What are some of the things you bought for your baby that you found were useless or not used? Good question. So one of the things that was very useful was a wedge. And if you're not familiar with a wedge, it's basically a pillow at an angle. I'm trying to look in the camera so I look like I know what I'm doing. So a wedge, and we put the changing tables on wedges. And if you're in the hospital, you will see that the at least at the hospital we were at, they have like these little, they're not plastic, I think they're maybe plastic, but kind of tray, like buckets, and that's where like the baby sits in when they're first born, and they put the blankets in. Well, those are all on an angle in the hospital. And I would imagine they know why, but I didn't realize that until my mother pointed it out, because our baby, our son, was going nuts, crying and uncomfortable and gas and all kinds of stuff. And it turns out that putting a baby on an angle eliminated a lot of that. So we put him on a wedge for changing. We also actually got a harness to put him on a wedge for sleeping. And it completely changed how he slept. So instead of, think about it as yourself. You are eating a huge meal, and then you lay back flat on your stomach. On your back, or even your stomach. It's not very comfortable. So in the same vein for the child, and that's why many of them like car seats, they, all these little seats and these little jumpers and all these little things that they like, is because they're at an angle. And so that was a huge thing for us, is that we, my mom was the one who said, hey, it looks like your son's a little uncomfortable. Why don't you change him on an angle and see if he has you can put him sleeping on an angle. Now, of course, sleeping on an angle, they're going to fall and stuff. So there was like this harness device where they actually could slide in and be kind of snug, and they were on an angle as they would sleep. And it just really changed the way. So that was really good. That was really useful. I wasn't a big fan of, like, we didn't use sound machines and, warmers for the wipes and things like that. All these sort of things that, I don't want to say, things that made the baby way more comfortable. And I'm not saying that we didn't want to make our baby comfortable, but I think what I kind of realized, or what we wanted, was we wanted our baby to be adaptable into different situations. And so kind of like a sound machine, if the baby is always used to the sound machine, then what happens when you don't have the sound machine? Oh no, the baby's not going to go to sleep. So that was something, we were so regimented and so organized that I kind of at least wanted some of that, where the child wouldn't be so restricted that you're saying, oh my gosh, we don't have this and we don't have this, so we're not going to have this, and we tried to be regimented with food and schedules and things like that. But what happens is that when you are so regimented and you go off schedule, everything gets, thrown in a disaster. So the same thing, like, you have warmers for the wipes. Okay, the baby's used to some warm wipes on their butt. Great, that's comfortable. And then what happens when you don't have the warmer and the baby's really uncomfortable because you're touching them with a cold wipe? So those kinds of extra things for me just wasn't something that I felt like we needed. I'm trying to think of anything else that as a baby. Strollers and car seats and all those kinds of things, interchangeable. Hey, Actadad, Mark with Actadad. How's it going? Everybody check him out. Actadad's doing some great stuff. Good to see you. We recently recorded a podcast, so looking forward to that. Or not podcast, sorry, it was a Facebook Live. Or was it a podcast? I forget. I get it. So yeah, those were probably some things that were, not as crucial for me. I mean, here's the thing: is like, you can get by on a lot, or I should say, on a little amount of stuff. You want to make sure you've got diapers and change of clothes and, those things. But all these little gadgets, for me, it just wasn't important. Heck, we didn't have a baby monitor. For some people, that's crucial. They can't imagine not having one. I get it. We just didn't use it. With the second one, we definitely didn't need it because the baby was in our in our room, so you don't need a monitor if you're sitting right there. I just tried to be, when you have a second kid, I found that you are, at least for us, I was a little bit more relaxed, and I would imagine the third child, which I was a third child for my parents, it's like, yeah, whatever. And then you go fourth and fifth, and it's just like, they'll survive on their own. That's kind of what happens as they go down the line. So thanks. These are good questions. If anybody's got any questions, shoot it in the chat. We're doing YouTube, Facebook, Periscope, and Instagram. I got to get this. Hey, what's up, Rufino? How are you? So everybody, glad people can join us here. It's great. It's a Tuesday. Hopefully these days. I'm in San Diego and it's very overcast. It's not. I can look out the window, and it's very overcast, which is not normal for. What is it right now? It's June 4th. Are we in June 4th? This is what it is.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's June 4th, 2019. Make sure I know the year. So Actadad asked, what's your favorite activity to do with your kids under $10? I can tell you one of my favorites is simply just taking a walk, which is free most of the time. And what's even more cool is going at night and walking at night with a flashlight. that was something that I really enjoyed with my dad and enjoyed with my kid as well. Let's see, favorite activities. Riding a bike. Love riding a bike. In fact, making a bike track out in the street. It depends on where you live, obviously. We're in a cul-de-sac, so we could do that. So we actually took chalk and we just make a bike track, and then you have to follow the track. So that was a good one. Playing games. Love playing board games. Love playing cards. I do camping with my kids, which is way over $10 because we do it with a big group. But when we're there, we play cards at night often. And that's a really fun activity that my kids have learned to enjoy, kind of prior to going to sleep and winding down, is doing that. The games that we've played, Uno, lots of Uno, Monopoly, done the Chutes and Ladders, done all the sort of traditional kids games. Yeah, I actually taught my kids how to play poker and blackjack, which is good. Yeah, so those are good. Yeah, definitely I would say activities that involve getting outside. We have the benefit of being in San Diego, so I'm literally a mile. I can look outside, at least from my office and my house, but I can see the beach area from here. So we're kind of spoiled that way that I don't go there enough, but we can, and maybe that just feels as good as like we can go.
Right.
That's the important part. So I think activities. That's a cool thing though. Is I think dads are looking for activities often to do with their kids, and certainly it doesn't have to cost a lot of money. So getting outside, playing games, those kinds of things are good. Those are good questions. Let's see what else. How do I get my kid to? Who is this? Oh, Jack. Jack's asking, how do I get my child to stop whining without getting frustrated? Well, that's the important one, is without getting frustrated. Yes, child whining is very frustrating. What I would say, so children whine because it works. It was kind of like the crying in the middle of the night. So whining is something that we condition our kids to do because it works. So there's a couple of things that I've done with my children that I think helped. I wouldn't say solves it. And part of why I will say that is that because I think children go through whining phases. I think, in the 3s and 4s, it's just part of like how they're learning to, communicate and what that means. And then I think you want to curb it. The hope is that by like 7-ish, they're 7, 8, they're through their whining phase. I know with my kids, they went through this time where they were whining and doing so. A couple of things. Here's some action items for you as a parent. Remain calm. So without getting frustrated is you cannot take the whining personally. And so that's what happens a lot of times as a parent, is that we take the whining and such, very personal, and we just that they can't figure this out. But know that it is completely normal for a 4, 5, 6-year-old to whine. It is. Now, some whine more than others, and part of that is that they're whining because it works. So another thing that we've done, or that we did, was we would ignore them. So we'd actually, if they were whining, we'd actually ignore them. But we may preface that with, hey, if you're going to whine, I'm not going to talk to you. So you don't say talk to me in a big boy voice or a big girl voice. You actually will say, please just ask me the question without whining. So you can say, can I get something to eat? Or, and show them how that is. And you have to show them what the correct way to do it is. So don't just say stop, or don't just say don't do it. You have to show them what it means to not whine. And then the other part is if they are doing it, you ignore it. You can ignore it. The other thing that we've done is we say try again. So what will happen is the child will, I want that, whatever. I'm actually pretty good at whining. And the child will do something and whine, and then we'll say, try that again. And they know immediately And so that'll happen we'll do that even with my children talking in a way that I don't like. Maybe they're a little aggressive. Maybe that they're a little demanding, whatever it is. And so they may say something, or maybe they'll snap back because they're in a bad mood, whatever, and I'll say, hey, why don't you try that again? And so they know exactly what that means, and they'll say, Dad, can I please have... And so they will immediately switch and ask it in a better way. And I don't do it in a, I don't get pissed off right away. I give them another option, give them another chance. And I'm not going to take that personally. I'm not going to let how they're whining and talking badly to ruin my day. That's something I've learned better how to handle. Not perfect at that, but I've definitely learned that, whining can really get out of hand. And you can either ignore it, tell them how to do the right way, or, what else is it? Losing my train of thought. But anyways, those are all good things with whining. So, how are we on time? Oh, wow. Time flies when we're having a good time.
42 minutes.
Wow. It's funny, I think in the last couple of episodes, I've looked over at the time, and it's literally like it's 42.
Right.
It's like a weird internal clock, which we were talking about the other day, was when I record videos. Mm-hmm. I record videos in these little segments. It's kind of the method that I use to record. And literally they're 50 something seconds almost every time I record it. Yeah. And so my assistant was laughing because it's like as if I have a watch that, sits there and knows exactly when to cut it off. Maybe I'm just really weird about time. I don't know, but it's some sort of internal
that's
clock.
all your brain can handle.
Yeah. Yeah, that's all my brain can handle at one time. So that's funny. So yeah, if you guys got any final questions, let me know. Shoot them in the chat message. It's always enjoyable to answer people's questions, and and here's the thing: is I don't know all the answers. I won't claim that I know them all. Like even in the beginning, we were getting answers about teens, and I'm like, I've got to study up. I mean, that's something that I've dealt with newborns, and I've dealt with toddlers, and I've dealt with, so dealing with teens is something that's going to be a whole new world, and definitely I know a lot of people can benefit from that. So that's what we're gonna make sure that we're doing that. Anything else? No? Well, cool. With that, then, I will definitely be on next Tuesday. I'm pretty sure. At least we're scheduled to. And, one last one. Okay. Well, actually, two just came in. Do you have any good resources for parental leave? Offhand, I don't. Each state has its own laws. So there are some federal laws that come into play. It's also, important to inquire to your into your employer. So are there specific questions you have as it relates to parental leave? We did a parental leave video, and with that, I was suggesting to make sure that you do take the time. I wish now that I did take more time than I did. I'm self-employed, so it was kind of up to me. But it's definitely something that's really important. And one of the good resources for parental leave is Dove Men's Care. They are really big into supporting the cause. And I think on their website, they have some resources. You could probably just type in parental leave Dove Men's Care into Google, and they could probably, they provide some statistics, and I think they have some additional resources there. So that might be helpful. I've been to some conferences, and I've done with some things, and they've been a great supporter of it. So that might be a good resource. But like I said, I think each state has its own thing. There's the Family Leave Act, and so there's some federal things depending on where you're employed. So that's good. And the last question, absolutely, Dave, thank you for joining us. How do you build trust with your kids? So Act a Dad is asking that. Number one, be consistent. So you need to build consistency with your children, and that's not easy. And so I think building trust, and as you know, I mean, as an adult, ask yourself the question: how do you build trust with other people around you? And a lot of that is, they do what they say they're going to do. That's one. So, I really trusted my parents because they always did what they said they were going to do. And that's everything from like, hey, I'll be at your practice at 4:00 to, hey, tomorrow we're going to hang out and play a game after school or at night. And so one of the things of building trust, a lot of it around small children, is that it's you. I mean, here's the thing: by default, kids will trust you. I mean, your own children will just trust you by default. It's your job to break that trust. So if anything, they will trust you, and they'll trust you by you being there and and being affectionate and loving towards them and everything else. So it's your thing to screw up, if anything. And the way you can screw up is by not doing what you say you're going to do. That's probably that's probably the biggest thing. And I know people. I mean, I have people in my life that I've known that have had difficulty trusting people because of what their parents did. I have friends that they have difficulty trusting people is because their parents weren't reliable. They didn't do what they said they were going to do. They always they'd say, hey, I'll be there, and then they don't show up. And so one of the things that my kids know is that if I say something, I'm going to do it. And that for me has been, very, very important. And, if there's some reason why you're not able to or you can't or something, then you can discuss it. But by and large, my kids know that when I say something, it's cement. I mean, it is it. And that's the thing too, as a parent, is that you have to realize some of the things that you promise. So don't overpromise. There's been situations where we've said, hey, no, you could have ice cream, after dinner on Saturday or whatever. You better give them the ice cream, and we've had situations where my kids will forget, and then we'll just go, oh, don't worry about it. They won't remember. And then there's other times where, and that was probably not a good thing, where other times say, oh, you know what? We promised that. We need to make sure that we do that. And my kids, I would hope, would say that they trust us as a result of that, and whether they tell us secrets and we make sure we don't tell secrets. But just being there, I think, and being consistent. So the trust is yours to lose. So that's a good one to end on. Thank you, Act a Dad. So with that, I want to thank everybody. Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, Periscope, Twitter world, and we will see you next week.